Welcome to the THW What's Kraken show, hosted by me, Tom Pepper, Sean Raggio, and unfortunately not here this week, but he'll be back next week, Adam Kierszenblatt. Presented by the Hockey Writers, we talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at Tom Pepper, at Raggio9124, and at Adam K. Blatt. And we have a special guest joining us today, Matthew Zator, who covers the Vancouver Canucks at the Hockey Writers. How's it going, Matthew?
It's going good. Happy to be on the show.
Awesome.
So, guys, before we kick things off, bit of tough news out of the last week since we were last together. It's been a really rough week for hockey, rough week for a lot of people in general, but we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on it a little bit right off the hop. So there was a car accident a couple days ago in British Columbia involving 3 hockey players who were out of the Delta Hockey Academy. Parker Magnuson, 17, Ronan Sharma, and Caleb Reimer, both 16. And they were just kids. They were younger than any of us. I know for me personally, I just saw my younger cousins, 15, both of which play hockey. 13 as well plays hockey. So you hate to see that, especially it's never right. Never feels right, especially when it's someone younger than you. Just knowing how much you experienced in that time and how much they miss out on. We want to send our condolences to their families, their friends, their teammates as well. Another one, Raggio Bear, known as Mr. Ranger of the famous gag line with Vic Hadfield and Jean Mattel, passed away at 80 years old. And more recently, today, we found out Jimmy Broadway Hayes, former Blackhawk, Florida Panther, Boston Bruin, New Jersey Devil, passed away. The cause of death is still unknown, and he was a member of the Missing Curfew podcast with Scotty Upshaw and Shane O'Brien out of Hall Pass Media. It just seems like everything's piling on one after the other. We send our huge condolences to his wife, Kristen, sons, Bo and Mac, parents, brother, Kevin. It was tough. It's all tough. So much coming in one week. They were all young. Hayes was just 31. I can't speak as someone who's known him, but for someone who's been as big of a fan of his podcast as I was, it's almost like when you get, and maybe this is just me, an emotional attachment to a character in a TV show. I'm listening to this podcast every week it's on. I'm there in work. If I'm having a bad day, I throw on Missing Curfew. And he was one of the funniest guys. It's almost like, I don't mean any offense because I don't know him, no offense to those who did know him, but it's almost kind of like losing, you get that emotional attachment. So it hits a little differently. Colby Guy at Colby D Guy of the Hockey Writers just put out a piece about the legacy he left. If you guys want to check that out, follow Colby on Twitter, check it out to the Hockey Writers. I'll send it over to you guys. What are you guys thinking? How you feeling?
Yeah, it's just devastating around the hockey world over the past week or so. And again, we want to send our condolences out to those families and friends and everyone who's been affected by this. It's very sad. But hopefully today on the podcast, we can maybe provide some light and some happiness for people who have been affected by all of the stuff that's going on in the community lately. Mm. And so with that, we will get things started. So how have you guys been? How are you guys doing? Sean, how's your week been?
So the week's been all right. Work was a little busy, but I was in Syracuse this past weekend with those cousins I mentioned before. Just a little Sweet 16 and quinceañera action. Then got to play a little hockey with them, street hockey. Definitely got worked. So not looking too good on my end, but they're looking pretty good. And I'm hoping they're going to go far in their hockey careers. They're young. They got a lot, far to go, but they're doing well.
Good stuff. Matthew, how are you doing?
Well, doing good. It's just getting into the swing of things on new role here at the Hockey Writers, producing all these YouTube shows, and first time on guest on one of them, so it's an interesting different experience. But yeah, it's been good. Writing a lot and not doing my retail job at Canadian Tire as much, which is awesome to me. So
yeah, good stuff. And for the viewers who didn't know, Matthew is the new producer of the show, so he did an awesome job last week, and yeah, we're really excited to have him on board here. And let's jump into it here. So the Seattle Kraken signed a fourth goaltender, Antoine Bibeau, to a 1-year, 2-way contract on Friday, $750K AAV at the NHL level. So this is pretty much an AHL depth signing. Nothing too exciting here. The Kraken has kind of been slow on the news front the past few weeks. So we're trying to provide you with some good content here, but we'll kind of discuss this and break this down and how Ron Francis is kind of building depth at every position now. So things are looking good. So I'll hand this over to you, Sean. What were your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that I really hope, and I'm kind of assuming that this isn't the case, but I really hope he's not going to be the guy in the AHL. I want Joey Decord. I was very happy with that selection, and he needs to be the guy that they're going to develop. Grubauer is signed for longer term, but Decord's going to be the guy of the future, and you want him to get those reps in at the AHL. He's your third goaltender in the sense of if Driedger or Grubauer go down, he's the guy. So you want him getting those reps. Yeah.
And Matthew, I don't know how much Kraken knowledge you've got, how much you've been keeping up with them, but or if you have any opinions on this. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, yeah, like Sean said, Bibeau's more of a depth signing. He's not going to probably make a huge impact at the NHL level unless there's a ton of injuries, right? So, but you never know. I mean, you looked at the Golden Knights in their first season; they went through like 5 goaltenders in their first season. So, injuries happen, and he may end up being in the NHL. He hasn't played a lot in that level, but like I said, it's probably more of an AHL move. He's played most of his career in the AHL. But you need depth, and he'll provide that.
Yeah, so not much NHL experience. He's played 4 games, 2 with the Leafs, 2 with the Avalanche. He was a 2018 AHL All-Star, and last season he had a .912 save percentage at the AHL level in 8 games played. So, yeah, nothing too exciting here, nothing too fancy, but a good depth signing here, and again, I agree with you, Sean. I hope Joey Decord is the guy down in the AHL, but we'll see how that shapes out. And so now we will shift into, because we have Matthew here, we'll keep on the goaltending conversation, but there's obviously some very interesting storylines going on in both Vancouver and Seattle with goaltending. We've already seen the surprises in Seattle with Philip Grubauer signing in free agency, the whole Carey Price saga leading up to the expansion draft. Is Carey Price going to go to the Kraken? Chris Driedger was expected to be the number 1 before Grubauer signed. Lots of stuff going on. And I'm sure Matthew as well has some stuff to share with us about what's going on with the Canucks goaltending. So Thatcher Demko, he's 25 years old now, and I was just looking at the Canucks goaltending, and it looks like a lot of things are up in the air about how things could shape out. And if Demko's ready to take that starter role, how do you think things are going to shape up in Vancouver?
Well, Demko's ready to take the full-time starting role. I mean, you look at Braden Holtby last season with veteran backup. It's now Yaroslav Halak has taken over that role. I think Demko's ready to take that leap of being that goaltender takes the 60 plus, maybe not 60 starts, but that type of realm, because he's just going to be a superstar, and he's already shown flashes of it. We saw that in the bubble, playing against Vegas. He basically shut down the Vegas Golden Knights and made them frustrated and not be able to score. And I think that's what Demko can provide for the future. And 25 years old. He's kind of entering his prime years. I think in the next few years, he's going to be that, he's going to be a starter, and he has to be. And for the Canucks to be successful, he's going to have to be that star level elite goaltender. So I think he's ready for it this season, and Halak's there to provide that buffer. And he's a pretty good backup. He's showed that in Boston behind Tuukka Rask. So I think he's going to be good, even if he has to step in that 60-40 split type thing.
Mm-hmm. And so for Sean, we can get into some Kraken goaltending now here, and then we'll discuss kind of how this compares and how things are going to shape out. But of course, the Kraken now have Grubauer and Drieger as their 1 and 2, and that's very exciting when you look at kind of how this could have shaped out and how many different options there were for the Kraken with Carey Price on the table there from Montreal. And personally, I really like how everything's shaped out on the goaltending front, but I want to get your take on this. How do you think Kraken goaltending will shape out?
I think that in the immediate, that the Kraken have the edge. I think that Grubauer is a bit more established, and Thatcher Demko is going to be a great goalie. I think he's got a little bit more time to grow. Goalies usually develop a little slower than your skaters. So I definitely think that in the long run, Vancouver might have the edge there. Also, it's almost like a bit of I don't want to say like steps, whereas Grubauer to me is a little higher right now than Demko, and Demko is going to be higher than Decord. So I feel like there's not going to be that 2 elite goaltender at the same time matchup right off the hop. I definitely think that Halak's going to be leaned on in some cases, but I definitely see a good matchup. I think that Vancouver from the bubble, which was surprising, isn't Vancouver that we're seeing now. Defensively, the Kraken are going to help out Grubauer more than I think that the Canucks are going to help out Demko. I'm not as read up on Vancouver as Matthew is. Matthew, how do you feel about that? Is that
I'm the only thing about defense for the Canucks this season, it's unknown. And you have Ekman Larson coming in, Tucker Poolman. It's interesting. Canucks losing Alex Edler and Nate Schmidt. It's their defense wasn't that good. If you look on paper, they got the names to do it. And now with Brad Shaw coming in on the defensive side, I think the defensive structure of the Canucks is going to be better. So I mean, right now I think it's an unknown. I'm not sure how, judging by the last few seasons, if they play the same way, it's going to be Demko's going to have to bail them out all the time. They just can't do that. But I mean, we'll see how the defensive structure changes things. Personally, I think it's going to change a lot. I think a different coach with a reputation that Shaw has had in the past with Columbus, the defense, I think, is just going to be way better. He's just going to be able to get a lot more out of them.
Yeah. And with that, I definitely think that the Kraken will have the edge in the immediate. As I said, I think it'll kind of be like that ladder, but depending on how fast the core develops, if Demko doesn't develop as much as we kind of anticipate, I anticipate he's going to be a very good goalie in the NHL, then things will get a little bit more interesting. Not that it isn't interesting, but lack of a better term.
It's definitely going to be fun to watch. And of course, the Kraken home opener is against the Canucks. So we're going to be able to get to see these big goalie matchups here going. I expect probably Grubauer Demko will be the matchup that night. And yeah, there's a lot of fun things to come. We're going to talk even more about this rivalry up next. This is going to be a lot of fun here. Have the Canucks having this near local rivalry now. I mean, you've got the Battle of Alberta out there, and Vancouver's obviously kind of been left out with having that local nearby rival there. So with the Kraken now right across the border to the south, it's going to be awesome. So we'll reset the show, and then let's talk a bit more about this rivalry and how it's going to shape out. So you're listening to the THW What's Kraken show, hosted by me, Tom Pepper, Sean Raggio, and not here this week, Adam Kierszenblatt. Presented by the Hockey Writers, we talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at Tom Pepper, at Raggio9124, and at Adam K. Blatt. Also make sure to follow today's special guest, Matthew, at Matthew Zator, SC. And so with that, let's get into it here. So Matthew, you're out that side of the continent. What has the atmosphere been like around this Kraken Canucks rivalry? Are Vancouver fans already starting to hate this team, or some of them, getting folded into joining this fan base? How's everything shaping out there?
There's a bit of both. I mean, there's a lot of excitement that we can, as Canuck fans, we can go down to Seattle and watch, games against the Kraken. And there is a little bit of, it's like, the Canucks are in a bit of a difficult situation. They're not going to be very good. Let's go and join the Kraken fans. There's going to be a little bit of that, I think, but it's going to be exciting. I've wanted a Seattle team for the longest time because of that geographical rivalry. That it's like the Battle of Alberta, like you said, the Battle of Ontario. It's cool to have that rivalry. Hopefully, it lives up to the hype, because geographical rivalry compared to what's the in-game rivalry. We'll see if it does develop that way with the hate and that intense hockey. We'll see, but I think it depends on the personalities that kind of come when you do start playing the games. You'll see what type of personalities clash and what don't. The players that the Kraken have right now, I don't see that yet. I don't see that player-to-player type rivalry that you're going to be like, oh, I hate that guy. But we'll see how it goes. I think, and right away, it's still going to be pretty exciting to watch.
That's definitely
My computer's going a bit
What's that?
funky here. All right, Sean, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you think this rivalry is going to rank in the NHL? Do you think this is going to be one of the top rivalries? Do you think it's going to take a little while to build, or do you think this is just going to be hot right off the start?
Definitely going to take a while to build. I think it's a lot harder to get rivalries in sports in general today because there's such little hate. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got teams like, I'm going to jump to baseball for a second. Sometimes it doesn't even look like the Yankees and the Red Sox have much of a rivalry anymore, which blows my mind considering I grew up with, I think it was Pedro Martinez throwing Don Zimmer to the ground. So you take that to hockey, and a lot of these guys, there's so much more player movement between teams, whether it's guys in the minors, and those bottom sixers are usually the ones who you think are going to be the ones stirring the pot. So there's guys know each other, guys are on social media with each other, golf trips, etc., concerts. It's so hard to get that hate when you're buddy with guys across so many different teams. I think that the playoffs kind of have an asterisk next to it in the sense that it's, you're playing each other 7 times, and even last season, how the schedule was, you're playing the same teams. It was a lot easier to get hate that way, but I think that it'll be a little bit harder, especially because the Kraken, and if I recall, the Canucks don't really have too much of a, the guy who's going to stir it. There's no Ryan Reeves, Curtis Gabriel, Tom Wilson. Got to shout him out in that category. Jamie Alexiak and Brandon Tan of the Kraken are going to be fighting for who's going to have the most hits on the team, but that doesn't necessarily translate over to hate and fights, especially because if I recall, they've been pretty clean players about their physicality over the course of their career. So I think if they miraculously meet in the postseason, or it comes down to that, 10 games left in the season is basically the postseason already type feel, that's where we'll really start to see it happen. Mm-hmm. And this is speculation. For all we know, they could just off the hop, someone will just run, Brock Besser or Bo Horvat, and then we have a Donnybrook and rivalry off the hop. I'm not at all condone going and targeting anyone by that. But I mean, if someone were to do that, that type of a thing where that starts a rivalry off the hop, I think that'd be great for the sport, great for the teams. Again, I don't condone that kind of unretaliatory type of targeting, but that's the kind of thing that would establish it right off the hop, unless they're reading the media and they're giving into all this hype and they're like, all right, guys, line brawl off the hop. Why not? I'm getting off the hop way too much, but you know what? It's getting me excited. You need hate. You need hate in sports as much as it's buddy. When the clock's going and you're on the ice, you're on the court, you're on the field, you need hate. Hate is what fuels, at least from my perspective. You need that. Once the final buzzer goes, go out, have a drink together, sing Kumbaya. But when you're playing that game, you need it to go. You need it. Without it, you get more. And that's why people like playoff hockey over regular hockey. Although to me, I like any hockey, but still.
And that's a good segue into my next question. So, of course, we mentioned a couple times now the Kraken home opener will be against the Canucks. So, what are you guys expecting for that game? Do you think? I mean, you just talked about having line brawls at the start. I mean, probably not so likely. But do you think this is going to be a physical game? Do you think it's going to be an exciting one? Who's going to come out on top? Is it going to be high scoring, low scoring? What are your expectations out of this? So I'll start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. The NHL did this on purpose. They put the Canucks the first game against the Kraken on their home ice. This wasn't by accident. The NHL is trying to create this rivalry themselves. Not as much as what the geography already should. But I mean, I think this game's going to be exciting. I mean, both teams, the Kraken's going to want to get off to a good start. Canucks have already probably been playing because they start on the road. They have a few games before this. So, I mean, they will be I'm pretty sure the Kraken have already started playing as well. So this won't be the first time they're playing, but I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. And the star power the Kraken don't have a lot of stars on their team right now, but it's going to be fun to watch and to see how this all goes.
Yeah. You're expecting from home opening night, Sean?
Well, this might be a bit of an obvious statement, but I think that Seattle Kraken superstar Elias Pettersson is going to score a hat trick, and there's going to be a total of 150 penalty minutes. But no, I don't entirely. I really don't see an offer sheet happening. Don't worry. We like to have fun on this podcast. We like to joke around.
Don't put that up.
Oh man, I'm giving Matthew nightmares tonight. He'll never come back again.
Oh my gosh, it's not out of the realm of possibility though. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think I don't remember if it was you, Tom, or Adam last week who said there's going to be a lot of 2-1 games, a lot of low scoring. I think that part of me feels it's going to be like one of those 2-1 games, very defensive battle. I think that the Stars on the Canucks are going to be off to a bit of a slow start, especially Pettersson if he doesn't get signed until late. And I think that, guys like Brandon Tanev are going to make it very difficult for those Stars to play. I mean, that defensive game is his MO. He added somewhat, his offensive numbers were on good pace last year for some career highs, but definitely the Kraken are a defensive team. They were built from the back end. And I think that I think it was Adam, right, Tom?
Yeah.
As Adam said, there's going to be a lot more of those low scoring games. I think it'll be electric when they do score. I don't really know who would score that first goal. I think Mark Giordano scoring a slap shot from the point would be pretty iconic. But I think
I can see that, especially against the Canucks. He scores. Yeah.
That would be good. Now that could be a spark to the rivalry right there. Organic, history between him and each other. True.
Jaden Schwartz.
That was one of my thoughts too. Especially because if I recall, the line that in my head was him, Wenberg, and Eberle. All could use.
Oh, Eberle! Oh my gosh, Eberle kills the Canucks all the time. When he's in Edmonton, he's like Canuck killer. You have to be careful with that guy.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
But definitely a low score. And Eberle, I think this is his shot. I think he's early 30s, right, in age. And it was the Trotz effect. You're winning games, but your offensive numbers are going to suffer. That's why Barzal isn't a 90-point player right now. Not to knock, Barry Trotz in his style, because it works clearly. But I think that, this could be Eberle's shot to really return to that offensive, I don't want to say game breaker, but definitely more of an offensive impact player, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I guess, write this down so I don't forget, because I might forget. If it's, I'm saying 3-1 with an empty netter, Eberle, Schwartz, Giordano.
All right.
Yeah.
We got it. Write that down. It's going to be extremely exciting. And obviously the Kraken are going to want to make a great impression there that first night in Seattle, which is obviously a sports crazed city. So If they can get in there and create a lively atmosphere and get the crowd into it, this team could have a lot of success in this city. And so my last question here about the rivalry.
Just as an aside,
the Canucks have gone. Of course, the Seattle Metropolitans were the first American team to win the Stanley Cup. So that was way back in 1917. The Canucks were founded in 1970 and have yet to win the Stanley Cup. So now this rivalry has some added pressure as these two teams are going to try to be the first to win the Stanley Cup and bring it back to the Pacific Northwest region. So with how everything's shaped up with this, with their prospect systems and everything in the future, and how all these organizations are set up, which team do you think has a better shot of winning the cup first? And when do you think that could be? I'll start with you, Matthew.
Oh, it's a tough question. The Canucks have gotten so close to the Stanley Cup, well, not many times, but it's based on prospects and the way that the Canucks have been building. I think the time with this core is in the next 2 years. And if that doesn't happen, the Canucks are going to be a while before they even have a chance again. Because I think the long-term prospects, past Elias Pettersson, past Quinn Hughes, past Bud Colson and them, is not very bright right now. And I mean, once they're kind of away, Stanley Cup's going to be far away. I think if everything goes right and Pettersson and Hughes and Besser and all them can do it, I think they can win the cup in the next like 3-4 years. I may be in the minority because everyone kind of is thinking the Canucks just cursed. They're not going to win the cup ever. But right now I'm thinking just the way the prospects are and Canucks can get Pettersson and Hughes signed to reasonable deals and they don't have that at the height of their cap. I think they'd have a good chance. So I'm going to say they're closer to the cup than the Kraken are right now because the Kraken just don't have that prospect base. The players they have right now aren't very impressive in the fact that they're going to be able to contend against the big teams. So right now I say the Canucks, unless, depending on where the Kraken get with their prospects in the future.
What do you think, Sean?
I think that I've been on record as saying that Ron Francis was going to use his cap to sign some free agents. It was going to be a fun time. Yeah, let's pretend I meant that for next season's free agent class because I don't recall the names off the top of my head. I was hearing about it, the class on a podcast, but there's going to be some big names available. If I recall, Malkin's one of them. And I mean, he might be a bit older and might not be the same game breaker that he once was, but that would still be a heck of a piece to have on your team. Matty Beniers is going to step in too. I would assume after this NCAA season, he might catch the tail end of this season, but I would assume next season he's going to be in there. I think that if they can sign some big names and they draft really well this upcoming NHL draft, I think they could be in a good position 4 to 5 years out. If I'm going to use Matthew's metric within the next 3-4 years, I think a lot of things need to go right for the Canucks to win it very immediately, but I think they do have a slight edge just because the Kraken have not made those free agent moves yet. They yes, Alex Wenberg, a couple others, they really haven't shown me that they're going to. It's good to have cap. It's good, you got your franchise future captain, Matty Beniers, coming in, but you haven't shown me that you're at least going to sign one of the big name guys. And I mean, I don't know if you ever heard of Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Bo Horvat's a guy I like a lot. Brock Besser, goal scorer right there. So I think that they got a guy still growing the Canucks. They have that star power, some established, some on the way. They definitely have their windows open a lot sooner. I don't necessarily think that the Kraken are going to roll over and die, but their window's not fully open yet. And pending more of these free agent signings, that'll really help determine it. So hate to sound like a hater, but I'm going with Zator. I know. I did it for the rhyme scheme. I apologize, but I'm a big
Yeah, it's fair, and it's also really interesting. You mentioned the free agency next year. I don't have the list in front of me now, but there are a lot of high talent players that are going to be available in free agency there. And that is kind of the Kraken's shot. And I think that's kind of what Ron Francis is planning. We've seen a lot of these 1-year deals being made. So he doesn't want to commit to people long term. And we can probably assume that is because of next year's incredibly talented free agent class. So again, I'm going to agree with both of you here. I think at this point, as things stand, the Canucks obviously have a better shot at taking home the first cup. But I think a lot of things are going to depend on if Francis, if his plan works out next offseason. So there's going to be a bit of waiting time, but I think this rivalry could be very fun for years to come. So we'll see what happens there. And so our last topic of the day here. So this one's Matthew might be able to give some input on this. So the Seattle Kraken obviously selected Kole Lind from the Canucks at the expansion draft. So he's my assumption is he'll be a 13th forward or an AHLer to start the season. But I want to get your take on him, Matthew. What have you seen with him in the organization? Do you think he has a high ceiling, or do you think this is just a guy who's going to be an extra piece for the Kraken?
I followed Kole Lind since he was drafted, and I was excited when they drafted him. He was coming out of the WHL. He was a very high scoring winger, great hands in front of the net, hard worker. And the thing is, he had a little bit of a slow start in his professional career. Had first AHL season, he didn't really show a lot. Started kind of dropping off the prospect chart a bit, but then he came back the next season and right to his pattern. He's a sophomore surge type guy. In his sophomore season, in every league he's been in, he's just blown up. And it happened in the AHL, the same thing. He became a dominant player, started playing the same way he played in junior. And now I think has the potential to be a second line player. He's got, like I said, he's got great hands in front of the net. He's gritty. He can play the game at a fast pace, and he's shown he can play in the NHL, which he did play a few games at the end of last season with the Canucks. Showed really well. I mean, he didn't score, but great forechecker. I think he's probably one of the better forecheckers that the Canucks had in prospects wise when he was here. I was actually really excited to see him for the Canucks this season, see what next step he'd take. But I kind of assumed that the Kraken would be picking him because he's got the potential. He's young, and of the guys that the Canucks did expose, they weren't going to pick any guys like Roussel, Louis Eriksson, those types of guys. It's just not happening, especially with what Francis was doing with the not taking on big contracts, and he wasn't going to do that. So, I mean, picking Lind, and they've got a great guy with great potential, and I hope he doesn't bite the Canucks in the butt in the next few years, because I think he can be that second line player and be a 15, 20 goal scorer, maybe even a 25 goal scorer.
What do you think, Sean? Did you like the pick from the Canucks?
So before I answer that question, I'm going to give you, a little bit of an audible, quick trivia question. Who's another player associated with the Kraken who had a rough start to their professional career? Ended up getting sent down to the ECHL. This guy did.
Yanni Gourde.
Yes.
And Matthew projected that Kole Lind could be a second line center, and Gourde played third, 3C on a fantastic team and could be anywhere from first to second line center with the Kraken. So I definitely think I like that. AHL struggling when you make the jump isn't abnormal, especially if you're turning it around. I think that based on what I think it was Tom who just mentioned, or no, Matthew, I think at the end of it, you were saying how, who are they going to take? Roussel, Eriksson.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the best available pick, and you're going to give him a shot. Like, prove it. You're making strides, prove it. You're going to be the 13th forward, be the best 13th forward, and beat out the 12th guy. And I think it's a good way to motivate a player. And especially if he ends up getting that potential, reaching that potential, that'd be great for the Kraken in the long run. Might save them money by not having to pay a free agent, full circle, to fill a role. And personally, and I mean, I'm a homegrown guy. Granted, he's not homegrown. You could kind of argue that, being one of the first guys selected the team kind of gives you that homegrown with an asterisk. But those are the kinds of guys I want to invest in, guys who we brought in. That's part of the reason, aside from the obvious, Matty Beniers, I think, is going to be a future captain. I want my leadership to be guys who we developed. They are core to us,
Now, I want to point something else out with Kole Lind is that he didn't play center in junior. He switched to center in the AHL this past season. And his face-off numbers were ridiculous in the AHL. He actually looked really comfortable as a center iceman. So, I mean, just that to point that out, he's not a natural centerman. And he's looked very comfortable in that role. And now he's become way more versatile. And that's why I was excited to see him for the Canucks. But
Ron Francis drafted versatility. So many guys can play center or wing.
Yeah.
That, again, injuries are going to happen. Knock on wood. That's sports. And you want that versatility. You got Colin Blackwell was the perfect example. He was playing on the wing with Panarin. I'm pretty sure he's center when he had to for the Rangers. So those are the kinds of guys you want on your team. That's how you make a deep forward core. Whether or not the offensive prowess is there yet, fine. But that's how you find depth. That's how you start to find depth. Guys who can play in multiple roles, multiple positions.
Yeah. You guys have got me really excited for Kole Lind now. I really your input there, Matthew. And yeah, great point, Sean. With Ron Francis has really, really done well at getting versatile guys. You can play on the wing, they can play center. And I think this is going to mean a lot for the organization long term, especially if some guys end up needing to be moved or there's nice trade offers on the table and maybe you're missing a center and there's a winger who's able to play center or vice versa. I think he's really thought a lot of this stuff through, and Kole Lind is obviously a great pick from the Canucks, and Matthew has me optimistic that he could turn into an NHL mainstay. So we'll see how things shape out. It's also interesting, the first Kraken preseason game ever is September 26th against the Canucks. So we could see Kole Lind most likely make his debut in a Kraken jersey against his former team in the Canucks. So that could be an exciting one, and we'll see if he can maybe it might. It's an interesting. Don't think a preseason game could really spark a rivalry, but who knows if Kole Lind lights it up that night? You never know.
I mean, wasn't it a preseason game when John Scott of Dropping the Gloves with John Scott podcast and All-Star MVP John Scott? Isn't that when he jumped Phil Kessel? I mean, anything.
Was it the preseason?
Yeah. You never know what stuff starts. It's an interesting. Kole Lind is going to be like, I'm good at hyping prospects up for the Canucks, and it's not unrealistic. This guy is. I think he's the real deal. I think if you guys watched my rankings and for draft rankings and the players I like, work ethic is huge with me, and that's how you make it in the NHL is work ethic and being able to change your game to adjust. And that's what Lind has done the last couple of seasons. He's adjusted his game at certain points, gave him the opportunity to play center, and he ran with it. And top line center on the Utica Comets, and he was dominant a lot of the games. And it makes it the NHL, and he looks pretty good. Granted, Travis Green didn't give him any time at center ice in the NHL, so you don't know how his faceoffs will translate to NHL centerman. But just for the fact that he had some success with it in the AHL level, that puts some hope that he can actually do it at the NHL.
It'll be interesting to see how Hackstall also tests using him in preseason, if he lines up at center or on the wing. So, Sean, any final words?
Yeah. So two things. The first thing is first time connectivity, didn't have a problem. So I think episode third time's the charm.
Yeah.
So that's nice to see. And just one more time, send our condolences to the families of those lost. Go do something kind for someone out there. Send someone you haven't spoken to a text, just see how they're doing. And so much bad's going on in the world. It's not that hard to give a little good.
Yeah.
Be someone's light at the end of the tunnel.
Very well said.
Yeah.
All right. And so with that, we will wrap it up. I am sweating. This room is boiling. So I need to go stuff. I don't know why I wore a hoodie, but all right. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode of THW What's Kraken. We hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to next week. Adam will hopefully be back to join us, and we'll break down any Seattle Kraken news and rumors that come up over the next few days. So again, make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at Tom Pepper, at Raggio9124, and at Matthew Zator SC. So from Tom, Sean, and Matthew, this has been THW What's Kraken.